If you've watched the Silent Hill 2 Remake combat reveal trailer, you probably have the same initial reaction to it as I did, that there were a lot of elements which felt off. So in this video, I'm going to share with you my evaluation of it on a shot-per-shot basis. Not to make fun of the current build, but rather to provide constructive criticisms and suggestions that would give us possible answers about its shortcomings, and maybe give the developers some ideas on how to improve it, just in case they see this presentation. Let's start off with one of the things that they got right, which is the overall texturing. For the most part, it looks fine, especially when we zoom in on puzzle pieces lit by the flashlight. It looks fantastic. There's just one specific item that drew my attention: this safe. The weathering on this thing is inaccurate, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. For the unaware, weathering is a painting technique where we make an object look well used by adding indications of wear and tear. If we search for images of old safes, you'll find that there's hardly any of them where the perimeter of the number dial is scratched up, because our fingers never touch that area when interacting with it. Instead, I suggest transferring the scratches here, surrounding this handle on its right side. Because it's slightly tapered and is very close to the steel plate, there should be more of it on the outermost portion. The great usage of texture is also quite evident on exterior shots, which complemented its lighting that captured the classic daytime overcast feel the Silent Hill franchise is known for. I am, however, concerned with the usage of fog, which according to this shot is clearly asymmetrical. On the upper portions of the map, we have a classic implementation of this well-known atmospheric, but down below on ground level, it's behaving more like dry ice or something out of a fog machine, which is fine, but I think it's too dense. If we take a look at this other shot, I can hardly see anything on the ground. Maybe this only happens when there are enemies nearby, which would be a great addition to the tension, actually. But if this is present while our character is just exploring the streets, in my opinion, this should be turned down a bit. As I was checking out the interior shots, I noticed that there are two color profiles being used, and I can't tell if this was due to the editing of this trailer, or if this is how the finished game is going to look. On one hand, we have shots like this, which looks just fine. The shadow areas, midtones, and highlights are all perfectly balanced. But then we have something like this, a low contrast look where the shadows are washed out with a dark gray tone instead of black, and the highlights don't look very bright. This kind of coloration has its applications, but it has several downsides like the two I just mentioned. And there's another one that's clearly apparent in this shot. It's underexposed, we can barely see anything. The problem with a low contrast look, combined with a low light scenario like this, is that we are left with an image that looks too dark, because if we try to raise it while maintaining relative contrast, the gray dark areas become much worse, and ends up washing out most of the scene. If the creative director of this game plans to play around with color profiles, I highly suggest making the tool available for players in the main menu, because this is one of those things that some people might enjoy, others not so much. Personally, I prefer the default option of maximizing the whole 8-bit dynamic range, so instead of what we have here, I'd rather have something like this. When it comes to the music, the first thing we hear in the video is a simple piano tune straight from the original Silent Hill 2 called Magdalene. Hearing it again after all these years, I think it needs to be updated. First off, the way it was played lacks any dynamics, which makes the performance feel robotic, and by extension the notes do not invoke any sort of emotion, other than sounding dreary. Maybe that was the point when it was first thought of by Akira Yamaoka, who also happens to be the composer for this remake. but I'm sure he can enhance it to be more expressive. The exact opposite is happening with Promise, the other soundtrack heard in the trailer, where the modern recording, in my opinion, is inferior to the original. I've listened to both versions multiple times, and I think the problem is with the electric guitar. In the original, all of the instruments are on the same level, but in the modern recording, they emphasized the guitar and made it sound more edgy, which messed up the entire thing. So instead of sounding like a classic Silent Hill vibe, this feels more like something we'd hear in a 90s action movie trailer. Now here's the remake trailer using the original sound. Thankfully, this is just a matter of making some adjustments in the mix, which can easily be fixed. Throughout the entire video, we also get to hear various sound elements like grinding and creaking noises, as well as some in-game sound designs. They all sounded great until James Sunderland started firing the pistol. Why does it sound like a silenced weapon? It doesn't make sense. The developer should look into games like Metro Exodus or any titles from Remedy as reference for what great gun sounds are like. Then there's the stomp sound effect, which is more like a punch. I think Silent Hill 4 did it best when it comes to this, which sounded more squishy. Speaking of which, the biggest problem that this game has in its current build is the combat. Apart from the questionable sound effect, there's something off with the pistol recoil, and I think I've narrowed it down to two issues. First off, the animation is on the slower side. Here's an edited version where I sped up the video a bit. Second, the arm recoil starts happening as the muzzle flash appears, when it should be after a couple of frames, just like how it's done in Alan Wake 2, for example. The shotgun animation, meanwhile, has an exaggerated elbow kickback, which should not happen even if this weapon doesn't have a stock. I've never seen a game character fire a boomstick like this before because, in real life, the shoulder and arm muscles will naturally fight the recoil, preventing it from flying back that far. By far, the biggest issue in combat is with regards to melee attacks, and we can boil it down to simply not having a sense of weight. He does a wind-up before every swing, which is good, but the animation after that is the issue. The forward movement is a smooth, linear progression, as if he's swinging a well-balanced sword instead of a top-heavy plank of wood. So, the animation has to start slow that quickly accelerates, taking advantage of the momentum. The same principle should also apply when pulling the weapon back. Any Souls game is a good reference, albeit sometimes exaggerated on purpose. Upon closer inspection, I really like the fact that there are two variations in landing a hit. First is when a target goes with the direction of the blow, and therefore the weapon will continue on its path. Second is when the target's mass completely stops the weapon, and make it bounce back a bit. There's even a recognition of hand shock, because in real life, the wielder will also feel in his hands that sudden deceleration. Here, it is done through a bit of camera shake, although I suggest adding a very slight delay in between each swing. So those were my observations about the current state of Silent Hill 2 Remake. Hopefully this presentation provided you with answers as to why some elements of the game feel off. As for Bluebird team, I wish them the best of luck during this development phase and hope for the best outcome.